You've heard the songs, you've watched the performances, but there's one thing you probably never realized about some of your favorite country stars: their family. That's right. In this video, we'll reveal 20 shocking bloodlines, marriages, and family connections among classic country stars that most fans never knew existed. Some of them were kept under wraps for years. Others were overshadowed by more famous relatives. And in a few cases, the connection is so deep in the family roots, you'd have to trace generations back to see how it all began. Number 1. The Carter family and June Carter Cash. Before there was a Johnny Cash, before the Man in Black became a household name, there was June Carter, and the legacy she carried on her shoulders was far older than anyone realized. June Carter wasn't just a country singer. She was born into country music royalty. Her mother, Maybelle Carter, was a founding member of the Carter family, one of the very first country music groups ever recorded, dating back to the 1920s. Their harmonies, their Appalachian roots, and their style became the bedrock of early country music. June grew up surrounded by music. From a young age, she was performing on the radio with her mother and sisters. But June wasn't just another Carter. She had wit, charm, and a magnetic stage presence that made her a standout. Her comedic timing and expressive voice made her a star in her own right. But it wasn't until she met Johnny Cash that her name became part of a mythic love story. Their duet Jackson won a Grammy. Their love story, filled with personal struggles, redemption, and fierce loyalty, became legendary. But what fans often forget is that June also helped bring the Carter family's legacy into Johnny's career. When she joined him on tour, she brought her family too. Audiences around the world heard not just Johnny's gravelly voice, but the timeless harmonies of the Carters right alongside him. And their son, John Carter Cash, continues both legacies to this day. It's easy to see June as Johnny's wife. But that's only part of the story. She was the bridge between country music's past and future, carrying the spirit of her family while building a new dynasty with Cash. 2. Loretta Lynn and Crystal Gayle. They shared the same bloodline. They grew up in the same poor Kentucky home. But to millions of fans, Loretta Lynn and Crystal Gayle seemed like two completely separate stories. Loretta, the coal miner's daughter, burst into country music with raw honesty and fearless lyrics about the struggles of working-class women. She was tough, gritty, and uncompromising. Her songs talked about real issues: birth control, cheating husbands, and standing up for yourself. In the 1960s, that kind of truth-telling made her revolutionary. But Crystal Gayle? She took a different path. With her smooth voice and elegant stage presence, Crystal was country pop perfection. Her hit, Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue, became an international sensation in the late 70s. She wore long, flowing hair, glamorous gowns, a far cry from Loretta's no-nonsense image. What fans didn't know was that they were sisters. Full-blooded, born to the same mother and father. Crystal was the youngest of 8 children, Loretta the second oldest. There was more than a decade between them, and by the time Crystal started her career, Loretta was already a legend. At first, Crystal was signed under a label that didn't want her to use the Lynn name. They didn't want her riding on anyone's coattails. So she carved her own identity, and she did it with class. The two never tried to compete. In fact, they often praised each other in interviews. Crystal always credited her sister's courage and strength as her guiding light. And Loretta? She proudly introduced Crystal at shows as my baby sister, and the only one prettier than me. In a world where siblings often clash in the spotlight, these two prove that love and legacy can go hand in hand. Number 3. Hank Williams and Hank Williams Jr. If there were a Mount Rushmore of country music, Hank Williams would be carved into the stone. His voice was lonesome, his lyrics cut deep, and his songs, like I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry and Your Cheating Heart, defined heartache for generations. Hank Williams lived fast, burned bright, and died tragically at the age of just 29. His death in 1953 rocked the music world, but what most didn't realize was this: he had left behind a son who would one day carry his name into a new era. Enter Hank Williams Jr. Born Randall Hank Williams, he was only a toddler when his father died. But from the moment he could speak, the world expected him to sing like Hank. He was brought up on stages, often performing his father's songs to crowds who wanted the ghost of the legend, not the soul of the boy. The pressure was immense. Hank Jr. grew up with a name that carried impossible weight. For years, he tried to fit the mold, wearing the suits, singing the ballads, until it nearly destroyed him. Then, in the 1970s, he broke away. He grew a beard, put on sunglasses, picked up a bottle of whiskey, and started playing Southern rock-inspired country that spoke to his own generation. Songs like A Country Boy Can Survive and Family Tradition weren't just hits, they were declarations of independence. But the legacy never left him. In fact, he embraced it on his own terms. Today, fans see him not just as the son of a legend, but as a legend himself. And perhaps no other father-son pair in music history has ever had such a haunting, complicated, and triumphant connection. Half 4. Pam Tillis and Mel Tillis. She dazzled fans in the 1990s with heartfelt ballads, fierce independence, and a voice that could break your heart in two. But few realized that Pam Tillis was the daughter of one of country music's most beloved legends, Mel Tillis. Mel was a country hitmaker from the 1960s through the 80s. Known for songs like Coca-Cola Cowboy and I Ain't Never, he had a signature charm both on stage and off. But Mel was also famous for something else, his stutter. Despite his speech impediment, he delivered performances with confidence, humor, and an unmistakable twinkle in his eye. Off stage, he couldn't always speak fluently, but on stage, he sang like silk. Pam grew up backstage, watching her father command the Grand Ole Opry. But when she set out to start her own career, she didn't want to coast on his fame. She wanted to earn it. And she did. Pam Tillis became a 1990s icon with songs like Maybe It Was Memphis and Mi Vida Loca, My Crazy Life. Her music blended traditional country with bold, contemporary storytelling. Critics praised her for bringing strength and vulnerability to every line. And fans, especially women, adored her. She once said, "I was proud of my father, but I didn't want to be Mel's little girl. I wanted to be Pam." And she succeeded. By the time she won the CMA Female Vocalist of the Year award in 1994, it was clear she had carved her own place in country history, not beside her father, but right up there with him. Their bond remained strong, and they even performed together in later years, a touching reminder that legacy and love don't have to be in competition. 5. Waylon Jennings and Shooter Jennings. When you grow up with a father like Waylon Jennings, it's hard to find your own voice. But Shooter Jennings didn't just find his voice. He created a whole new sound. Waylon Jennings wasn't just any country star. He was a rebel, a founder of the outlaw country movement that flipped Nashville upside down in the 1970s. Alongside Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, and Chris Christopherson, he pushed back against the polished, predictable music coming out of Music Row. His hits like Luckin' Back Texas and Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way gave country a gritty rock and roll edge and an attitude fans couldn't resist. Shooter grew up on the road, surrounded by legends. His mother, Jessi Coulter, one of the few prominent female outlaw stars of her time. Music was the family business, but Shooter didn't want to imitate. He wanted to innovate. Rather than follow in his father's exact footsteps, Shooter Jennings merged country, southern rock, and even industrial metal influences into something entirely new. His debut album, Put the O Back in Country, was both a tribute and a challenge, honoring the past while blazing into the future. He has since built a loyal fan base and a reputation as an artist's artist, someone who isn't afraid to experiment, but always keeps one boot in the dust of country's roots. He's also become a respected producer, working on projects with Brandi Carlile, Tanya Tucker, and even Marilyn Manson. Shooter often speaks with deep respect for his father. In interviews, he calls Waylon a force of nature, but also admits that his biggest challenge was learning how to step out from under his father's long shadow and walk his own path. And he has. Shooter Jennings may carry the name, but he earned the legend on his own terms. Number 6. Thomas Rhett and Rhett Akens. When fans first heard Thomas Rhett's chart-topping hits like Die a Happy Man or Life Changes, many assumed he was just another talented newcomer with a modern twist. What they didn't know? Country music was practically embedded in his DNA. Thomas Rhett is the son of Rhett Akens, a 90s country singer-songwriter known for his own solo success, most notably the hit That Ain't My Truck. While Rhett Akens didn't become a megastar on stage, he quietly built a powerhouse career behind the scenes, writing hits for Blake Shelton, Luke Bryan, Jason Aldean, and more. In Nashville, he's known as one of the most dependable and creative songwriters in town. So it's no surprise that Thomas Rhett grew up surrounded by melodies, rhyme schemes, and Music Row legends. But when he stepped into the spotlight himself, he didn't just echo his dad's sound, he expanded it. Mixing elements of R&B, pop, and even funk into his country framework, Thomas became a new kind of superstar. With his infectious hooks, heartfelt lyrics, and crossover charisma, he's won over fans from all genres. Despite their different styles, the father-son bond is rock solid. They've co-written multiple songs together, including Thomas's Star of the Show, which is about his wife Lauren. In interviews, Thomas often credits his dad for teaching him how to write a song that actually says something, not just fills radio space. It's a rare case in country music where both generations are thriving at the same time, one penning hits for others and the other performing global smashes to sold-out crowds. In this family, the music gene didn't just pass down, it multiplied. Nashville 7. Johnny Paycheck and Donald Eugene Lytle, the real story. Now, this one isn't about a father and son or famous siblings. It's about a man who reinvented his entire identity and the hidden truth behind a legendary country name. Fans knew him as Johnny Paycheck, the tough, no-nonsense outlaw behind Take This Job and Shove It. His voice was pure grit, and his attitude defined the rebellious spirit of the 1970s honky-tonk scene. But the name Paycheck? That wasn't his real name. He was born Donald Eugene Lytle, a gifted musician from Ohio who could play guitar, sing harmony, and mimic voices with uncanny accuracy. In the early years, he played with George Jones and even helped arrange vocals for other artists. But in the 1960s, something shifted. Lytle adopted the stage name Johnny Paycheck, a nod to a boxer named Johnny Paycheck. The name had a working-class punch to it and fit his new, rough-edged persona perfectly. Here's where it gets interesting. Later in life, rumors swirled that Johnny Paycheck was secretly related to the real Johnny Paycheck, the boxer, or possibly to other entertainers who shared his birth name. But none of these family connections were ever confirmed. Paycheck himself added to the mystery, rarely discussing his origins, and instead leaning hard into the outlaw mythos he had built. What fans didn't realize was that Johnny Paycheck had changed more than his name. He had constructed an entirely new identity to escape the Nashville system and create a brand all his own. And in doing so, he became one of the most unforgettable and enigmatic figures in country music history. 8. Jessi Coulter and Waylon Jennings. Most fans know Waylon Jennings as a titan of outlaw country, but behind every rebel is someone who keeps the storm grounded. For Waylon, that person was his wife, Jessi Coulter. What many don't realize is that Jessi wasn't just Waylon's wife. She was an accomplished country artist in her own right, and part of one of country music's most musically gifted families. Born Miriam Johnson in Arizona, she adopted the stage name Jessi Coulter and began her music career in the late 1960s. Her big breakthrough came with the hauntingly beautiful I'm Not Lisa, a song that soared to the top of the charts in 1975 and became her signature hit. But it was her collaboration with Waylon, both musically and personally, that made them a country power couple. They recorded duets, appeared on stage together, and were central figures in the outlaw country movement. Along with Willie Nelson and Tom Paul Glaser, Jessi and Waylon were featured on the legendary album Wanted. The Outlaws, the first country album to go platinum. The two had a fiery but enduring marriage, marked by creative partnership and mutual respect. Their home was as much a musical haven as it was a family, and their bond created more than just hits. It created another country artist, their son, Shooter Jennings. So in one single family, you have a legendary outlaw, a boundary-breaking female voice, and a modern-day genre bender, all connected by blood and bound by music. In the world of country, the Jennings-Coulter line is nothing short of a dynasty. 9. Willie Nelson and Paula Nelson. When people hear the name Willie Nelson, they think of long braids, a bandana, and a voice that feels like home. He's a living legend, a poet of the plains, and the soul of outlaw country. But few realize that Willie's talent didn't stop with him. He passed it on to his daughter, Paula Nelson. Born in 1969, Paula Nelson grew up on tour buses, in recording studios, and backstage at some of country's biggest shows. But being Willie Nelson's daughter wasn't always easy. For much of her childhood, Willie was on the road, and Paula's early years were filled with both music and distance. Still, the call of country was too strong to ignore. Paula eventually forged her own path in the industry. With a smoky voice and bluesy undertones, she released a series of albums that combined classic country with a modern edge. Songs like Rains Came Down and Have You Ever Seen the Rain showed off not just her vocal range, but her ability to channel raw emotion, just like her father. But she's not just a singer. Paula is also a respected radio DJ, hosting shows on SiriusXM's Willie's Roadhouse, where she plays both her dad's hits and the deep cuts of classic country. Though she rarely leans on her father's name, Paula has performed with Willie numerous times, and those duets reveal something deeper than genetics. They share a musical language, an easy harmony born of something more profound than practice. As Paula once put it, I didn't set out to be Willie Nelson's daughter. I set out to be a good musician. But I'm proud of where I come from. And Willie? He's just as proud. In interviews, he often beams when talking about Paula, calling her a true artist with a true heart. 10. Bobby Bare and Bobby Bare Jr. Some country artists pass down guitars. Others pass down grit. In the case of Bobby Bare and his son Bobby Bare Jr., they passed down both, along with a healthy dose of musical rebellion. Bobby Bare rose to fame in the 1960s and 70s with hits like Detroit City and 500 Miles Away from Home. His voice was smooth, weathered, and deeply human. The kind of voice that didn't just sing country music, it lived it. He was part of the Nashville sound, yet always leaned toward the edges of tradition, often recording story songs that blurred the line between spoken word and melody. But behind the scenes, Bobby had a son watching closely. Bobby Bare Jr. didn't follow in his father's exact footsteps. Instead, he blasted off in a wildly different direction, blending alt-country, rock, punk, and Americana into a genre-bending sound that critics loved and mainstream radio couldn't quite categorize. His 2002 album, Young Criminals Starvation League, earned praise for its raw honesty and unfiltered emotion. And while some fans of his father were caught off guard by the distorted guitars and edgy lyrics, others saw a new kind of Bare emerging, one that honored tradition while breaking every rule in the book. Despite their stylistic differences, the two have collaborated on stage and in the studio. And in those moments, the connection is undeniable, a storyteller's instinct, a respect for the craft, and a refusal to be boxed in. As Bobby Jr. once said, "My dad was outlaw country before they had a name for it. I'm just trying to keep the family business going, my own way." Two bears, two voices, one unshakable family legacy. Article 11. Rosanne Cash and Johnny Cash. To the world, Johnny Cash was the man in black, a towering figure whose voice could thunder through prison walls and whisper in chapel pews. But to Rosanne Cash, he was just dad. Born in 1955, Rosanne was the eldest child of Johnny Cash and his first wife, Vivian Liberto. While Johnny was battling fame, addiction, and inner demons, Rosanne was watching from the sidelines, a young girl caught between her father's legend and her own quiet longing to sing. When she finally stepped into the music industry, she didn't ride his coattails. She ran in a different direction. Rosanne Cash's style leaned more toward literary country, introspective lyrics, emotional depth, and a touch of folk pop sensibility. Her 1981 hit 7-Year Ache cemented her as a star in her own right. And in the decades that followed, she continued to release albums that critics hailed as mature, poetic, and brave. But her father's presence was never far. Rosanne has often spoken candidly about the complexity of their relationship, the distance, the admiration, the struggle to define herself outside of his massive shadow. Yet there was love, and music, and eventually, deep understanding. One of the most emotional moments in her career came with her 2009 album, The List, a tribute to a list of 100 essential American songs that Johnny Cash had given her when she was just 18. It was his musical inheritance to her. And she honored it not with mimicry, but with reverence and reinvention. Rosanne once said, "I never wanted to be Johnny Cash's daughter. I wanted to be a writer, a singer, a creator, and then someday, maybe, a Cash." She became all of that and more. Hash 12. Conway Twitty and Michael Twitty. To many country fans, Conway Twitty was the voice of romance, the deep, velvet-toned crooner whose songs like Hello Darlin' and I'd Love to Lay You Down became timeless ballads of Southern charm and passion. But behind the spotlight, there was another Twitty, one quietly carrying the legacy forward, his son, Michael Twitty. Born Michael Jenkins, he later took on the stage name Michael Twitty in honor of his father. While Conway's fame dominated the 1970s and 80s, Michael was growing up in the shadows of arenas, recording studios, and endless tour buses, watching firsthand what it meant to be a star. But Michael didn't rush into fame. Instead, he carved out his own space in the industry with patience, respect, and a deep understanding of his father's music. He began touring with tributes to Conway, not as cheap nostalgia acts, but as heartfelt homages to the man and the music that shaped him. In interviews, Michael has said that his goal isn't to be his father, it's to preserve the soul of Conway Twitty's sound for future generations. Audiences have responded warmly. With a voice strikingly similar to Conway's and a genuine affection for the music, Michael performs hits like Tight-Fitting Jeans and Slow Hand with authenticity and class, always reminding fans where the music came from. But he's also recorded original material of his own, combining classic country with gospel influences and a modern twist. In many ways, Michael Twitty is not just Conway's son. He's the keeper of a legacy, reminding the world that behind every legend is a family, a name, and a voice that still echoes. 13. Randy Travis and Ricky Trawick, his real name and his family roots. Before he was Randy Travis, the platinum-selling country megastar with hits like Forever and Ever, Amen, and Deeper Than the Holler, he was just Randy Trawick, a boy from Marshville, North Carolina, the second of 6 children in a working-class family. While the world came to know him as Travis, fans often forget that his real last name is Trawick, and that his family played a quiet but critical role in shaping the artist he would become. Randy's father, Harold Trawick, was a huge country music fan who pushed his children into music from a young age. By the time Randy was a teen, he was performing with his brother Ricky Trawick, and the two even formed a duo, playing honky-tonks, bars, and local radio spots. But Randy's wild years nearly derailed everything. Arrested multiple times, expelled from school, and heading toward a dead end, he was saved by a woman named Lib Hatcher, a club owner who gave him a second chance and eventually became his manager, and later his wife. She urged him to change his name, and so Randy Trawick became Randy Travis, a name that would soon become synonymous with the new traditionalist movement of the 1980s. But even as he rose to stardom, he never forgot his family roots. Though Ricky didn't follow Randy into commercial success, he remained a presence behind the scenes, sometimes writing, sometimes supporting, always reminding Randy where he came from. The Trawicks weren't a famous family, but they were a musical family, bonded by struggle, stubbornness, and a shared love for old-school country. Sometimes, the most meaningful relationships in country music aren't between legends. They're between brothers, one who stepped into the spotlight and one who helped him get there. Nasha 14. Marty Stuart and Cindy Cash. You probably know Marty Stuart for his flashy suits, wild silver hair, and deep devotion to traditional country music. But what many fans never realized is that he was once part of the Johnny Cash family, through marriage. That's right, Marty Stuart was married to Cindy Cash, the daughter of Johnny Cash and his first wife, Vivian Liberto. Born in Mississippi, Marty Stuart was a child prodigy. By age 13, he was already playing mandolin in Lester Flatt's band, and by his 20s, he had toured with Johnny Cash himself. That's where he met Cindy, and where the professional and personal worlds collided. The two were married in 1983. Though their union lasted only a few years, during that time, Marty became not just a collaborator, but a son-in-law to the Man in Black. He was around the Cash family during pivotal years, absorbing stories, style, and wisdom from one of the most iconic families in country music. After the divorce, Marty never used the Cash name to promote himself. Instead, he doubled down on honoring the roots of country music, becoming a curator, historian, and fierce protector of its traditions. He launched a remarkable solo career in the late 1980s and 90s with hits like Tempted and Hillbilly Rock. He also became a regular on the Grand Ole Opry and remains one of the genre's most respected musicians. Even though his marriage to Cindy didn't last, Marty's connection to the Cash legacy remains undeniable. In many ways, it helped shape his reverence for tradition and fueled his lifelong mission to preserve the soul of classic country. As he once said, "I got to stand beside giants. It was my duty to carry that flame forward." 15. Winona Judd and Naomi Judd. Few family duos in country music have captured the heart of America quite like the Judds, the powerhouse mother-daughter act of Naomi and Winona Judd. Their harmonies were haunting, their chemistry was electric, and their story? As dramatic and emotional as any country ballad. Before the fame, they were simply Diana and Christina, a struggling single mom and her teenage daughter scraping by in small towns across Kentucky and California. Naomi, who changed her name from Diana, had dreams of making music. But she didn't just chase her own dreams, she brought her daughter along with her. Winona, with her fiery red hair and bold vocals, quickly became the voice of the duo, while Naomi played the wise, guiding hand. Together, they formed the Judds, and by the mid-1980s, they were dominating the charts with hits like Mama He's Crazy, Why Not Me, and Grandpa, Tell Me About the Good Old Days. What fans loved wasn't just the music, it was the bond. The way Naomi beamed with pride when Winona sang. The way Winona leaned into her mother's harmonies. They weren't just singing songs, they were living them. But behind the scenes, their relationship was complex. Fame strained their connection, and by the 1990s, health problems forced Naomi to retire. Winona continued as a solo artist, creating a bold, soulful sound all her own. Their story took another heartbreaking turn in 2022 when Naomi Judd tragically died by suicide after a long battle with mental illness, just one day before they were set to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. In her acceptance speech, Winona stood on stage through tears and said, "Though my heart's broken, I will continue to sing. That's what we do." A mother and daughter, a duo, a dynasty. The Judds didn't just make music, they lived every word of it. 16. Shelly West and Dottie West. In the glitzy, rhinestone-studded world of 1980s country, Shelly West carved out her own lane. But behind her shimmering voice stood a trailblazing force, her mother, Dottie West. Dottie West was one of the first women in country music to write and record her own songs, long before that became the norm, with hits like Country Sunshine and A Lesson in Leavin'. Dottie brought a level of sophistication and heartbreak to the genre that helped open doors for future female artists. She was also a fashion icon, pioneering the glamorous look that would later define 80s country. But while she was breaking barriers on stage, she was also raising Shelly West, a daughter who inherited not just her musical ear, but her fearless spirit. Shelly first gained fame with her duet partner David Frizzell, yes, of the Frizzell family, with the smash hit, "You're the Reason God Made Oklahoma." The song catapulted her into stardom, and soon she was releasing solo hits like Jose Cuervo, a cheeky anthem that became a #1 country smash in 1983. Though their musical styles were different, Dottie's more classic, Shelly's more playful and contemporary, the bond between mother and daughter was undeniable. They even toured together during the height of their careers, bringing generations of fans under one roof. But their story took a tragic turn in 1991 when Dottie West died in a horrific car accident en route to a Grand Ole Opry appearance. The loss rocked the country music world and left a hole in Shelly's life that never fully healed. Shelly stepped away from the spotlight in the years that followed, but she never stopped honoring her mother's legacy. To this day, she remains one of the fiercest advocates for Dottie's long overdue recognition in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Their story is one of glamour, grit, tragedy, and most of all, love. A mother and daughter who never needed to compete because they were always singing with and for each other. 17. Sam Williams and Hank Williams' legacy. It's one thing to be the child of a country star. It's another to be the grandchild of a myth. Sam Williams is the grandson of the legendary Hank Williams and the son of Hank Williams Jr. That makes him a third-generation torchbearer in one of the most iconic families in country music history. But instead of leaning into the past, Sam is carving a road entirely his own and doing it on his own terms. With a voice that's hauntingly sincere and lyrics that dive deep into grief, identity, and personal pain, Sam's style is more ethereal alt-country than honky-tonk. His 2021 album Glasshouse Children was a stunning debut, a blend of raw vulnerability and subtle nods to the family legacy he both respects and resists. Sam has been open about the pressure of the Williams name. In interviews, he talks about the weight of expectation and the desire to create something that's authentically him, not just another echo of the legends before him. And yet, the lineage is undeniable. His grandfather, Hank Sr., redefined country songwriting. His father, Hank Jr., brought outlaw country into the Southern rock era. And now Sam, with his haunting ballads and artistic ambition, seems poised to take the family name into a more modern, introspective direction. In 2020, Sam experienced tragedy when his sister, Catherine, died in a car accident. The loss deeply affected him, and themes of grief and family run through his music like a quiet, trembling current. He once said, "I carry the name, but I'm writing my own story." 3 generations, 3 eras, one iconic name, evolving, surviving, and singing on. Number 18, Ann Womack and Aubrey Sellers. Ann Womack is often described as the voice that brought traditional country back to the airwaves in the late 1990s. With her timeless hit, I Hope You Dance, she struck emotional chords across genres and generations. But behind the spotlight, her daughter, Aubrey Sellers, was quietly preparing to shake things up in her own way. Born to Ann Womack and award-winning songwriter Jason Sellers, Aubrey Sellers was surrounded by music from birth. But instead of chasing her mother's path of polished Nashville ballads, Aubrey took a left turn into gritty, garage-style country with a rock edge. Her debut album, New City Blues, was raw, moody, and unapologetically bold, more Jack White than Reba McEntire. Critics praised her for being a fresh voice in the alternative country scene, drawing comparisons to acts like Casey Musgraves and even the Black Keys. But make no mistake, her heritage runs deep. Aubrey credits her mom for teaching her how to respect the craft, even as she redefines its boundaries. And while their musical styles differ, their bond is close. They've shared stages, interviews, and even collaborated musically, showing that country music isn't a mold, it's a canvas. Ann has spoken proudly of her daughter's independence, saying, "She's not trying to be me. She's not trying to be anyone but herself." And I admire that more than anything. In a genre often caught between tradition and innovation, the Womack Sellers family proves that both can coexist beautifully. 19. John Carter, Cash and the Cash Carter Legacy. Being the child of 2 country legends isn't just a blessing, it's a monumental responsibility. And no one knows that better than John Carter Cash, the only son of Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash. Born into not one, but 2 of the most iconic lineages in country music, John Carter inherited the weight of the Carter family legacy on one side and the outlaw mystique of Johnny Cash on the other. From the moment he entered the world in 1970, the expectations were sky high, and the music was all around him. But John Carter never set out to be a star in the same way his parents were. Instead, he became a guardian of legacy, a behind-the-scenes force who preserved and promoted his family's music through production, writing, and careful stewardship. He produced posthumous albums for both his parents, including the haunting American Vibe, 100 Highways, and oversaw extensive archival releases that kept their stories alive for new generations. That's not to say he never stepped into the spotlight himself. John Carter has released several solo albums, blending country, folk, and gospel. His voice may not be as booming as his father's, but his songs are heartfelt and steeped in tradition. Beyond music, he's also an author, penning memoirs, children's books, and reflections on growing up in the most famous family in country music. Through it all, he's carried himself with humility and purpose. As he once put it, "I don't try to be Johnny or June. I just try to be the best John Carter I can be and honor what they built." In a world that's often too quick to forget its roots, John Carter Cash stands as a reminder that some legacies aren't just remembered, they're protected. 20. Ernest Tubb and Justin Tubb. To many fans of traditional country, Ernest Tubb was a giant. With his unmistakable twang, Texas drawl, and boot-scuffing rhythms, he helped lay the very foundation of honky-tonk music. His signature hit, Walking the Floor Over You, didn't just top charts, it changed the direction of country music forever. But behind the trailblazing star was a young boy watching it all unfold. Justin Tubb, Ernest's son. Born into stardom, Justin grew up watching his father tour with his Texas troubadours, shaking hands at the Grand Ole Opry, and becoming one of the most respected figures in the genre. While some sons might have crumbled under that shadow, Justin embraced it and then made his own mark. In the 1950s and 60s, Justin Tubb began to emerge as a talented singer-songwriter in his own right. His songs were clever, emotional, and deeply rooted in tradition. He wrote hits for other artists, including Hawkshaw Hawkins, and also recorded charting singles like Take a Letter, Miss Gray. Justin's style was more polished than his father's, but the DNA was clear. His love for classic country and his commitment to preserving the honky-tonk sound made him a respected artist in Nashville circles. He even performed alongside his father on occasion, creating poignant moments of musical continuity between generations. Justin passed away in 1998, and though his career was quieter than Ernest's, his contributions as both a writer and performer solidified the Tubb family as one of country music's enduring bloodlines. And Ernest? He never hid his pride. He once told a reporter, "Justin sings from the heart. I guess that's the one thing I passed on that matters most." 2 Tubbs, 2 eras, 1 tradition.